Who Cares Who Killed Roger Ackroyd is a seminal piece of literary critique written in 1945 by Edmund Wilson. Its title, for those of you unfamiliar with detective fiction, is a play on the title of one of Agatha Christie's most famous and influential novels, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. You can probably imagine what Wilson's stance on the detective genre is from this title alone. In a scathing essay, Wilson derides and dismisses the detective novel as little more than an intellectual game, a sub-literary genre which, in his own words, ranks somewhere between smoking and crossword puzzles. This argument would essentially define criticism of the detective genre, which at the time Wilson was writing was at the height of its popularity, up to the modern day. The argument against the detective novel is that it scarcely counts as a novel at all. Its characters are not really characters, but caricatures, names intended to cloud the identity of a potential culprit. Its settings are all the same, the English country house or the rank inner city, and it lacks any sense of atmosphere or theme beyond the simple pursuit of the truth. It is nothing more than a crossword puzzle. The golden age of detective fiction, which Wilson was criticising, is certainly a genre with little room for innovation. It has a very strict set of rules which, be them contradicted, remove it by nature from the label of golden age detective novel. These rules can be seen most notably in the works, again, of Agatha Christie. Titles other than The Murder of Roger Ackroyd you might be familiar with would be Murder on the Orient Express or Death on the Nile, or, for Umineko fans, And Then There Were None. So, you might be wondering, where does the visual novel series Umineko When They Cry come into this? How does the golden age of detective fiction relate to the golden witch of Rokkenjima Island? Well, I may not be presenting a murder mystery in this video, but I will be presenting you with an argument. This is a refute of the arguments presented in Who Cares Who Killed Roger Ackroyd, using Ryukishi's own refute in Umineko. This is why I think you should care who killed the Ushiromiyas. The detective genre has a surprising amount of traction in the visual novel format, with the popularity of titles like Danganronpa and Phoenix Wright either rivaling or exceeding that of the When They Cry series. But there is a difference between a simple murder mystery and a golden age murder mystery, and Umineko's narrative emerges particularly from this latter type. Umineko not only represents but deconstructs the fundamental composites of the golden age detective narrative, yet it's also a glowing, loving tribute to the genre which it deconstructs. I will spare myself the trial of detailing Umineko's famously expansive plot, but for reference, the base setup of Umineko, that is, the isolated island location, the manor house, the interplay between servants and served, the dilemma over inheritance, are all quintessential staples of the Golden Age detective story. The Ushiromiyas family and their private island are ultimately a pastiche of Agatha Christie's characters and plots. The visual novel famously takes the island and message in a bottle framing technique from And Then There Were None. The haunting image of Beatrice's portrait in the family hall appears, as one of many examples, in Christie's novel A Crooked House, as does the notion of the creepy child in the family who knows a little too much. Another famous Christie novel, The Pale Horse, even features a plot where its central character, Mark Easterbrook, encounters three women claiming to be witches. In short, there is nothing in the mystery plot of Umineko, and in particular its various locked room mysteries, which can't be interpreted as a reference to another piece of Golden Age detective fiction. Perhaps the most interesting of Umineko's metatextual references are the characters of Delano A. Knox and Willard H. Wright, embodiments of the rules of the Golden Age genre, as codified by Harold Knox, and then later by S.S. Van Dyne, whose real name was Willard Hunting Wright, respectively. Another such allusion is the character of Erica Furido, a twisted parody of the all-important detective who herself often quotes Christie's iconic Hercule Poirot. She is the emotionally uninvolved detective elevated to a grotesque and over-the-top degree, even describing herself with the disturbing epithet of intellectual rapist. Herein lies one of the great strengths of Umineko, not only as a piece of storytelling, but particularly as a piece of Golden Age detective storytelling. The novel surprises its readers by taking these stock yet essential caricatures of the genre: the detective, the servants, the old butler, the commanding family patriarch, and imbuing them with an unexpected depth. Lack of character depth is one of the oldest critiques of a detective story. Umineko's author may be aware, of course, that by enriching his characters he is breaking some of the most fundamental rules of his genre. S.S. Van Dyne's rule number 3. There must be no love interest in the story. To introduce a more is to clutter up a purely intellectual experience with a relevant sentiment. Umineko takes many liberties with the strict and uncompromising Golden Age rules, but this is arguably the greatest. This is usually an aromantic genre, and based on Van Dyne's third rule, it is a genre which also commends itself for being aromantic. Yet, at the very centre of Umineko is a romance. Not just a romance between suspects, but a romance between the detective, Ushiromiyas Battler, and the culprit herself, the Golden Witch Beatrice. And since I will be treating the solution presented in the manga as canon, Yasuda Seo. This is of course the ultimate taboo of detective fiction. Hercule Poirot, Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, they are all by and large aromantic characters. Sentiment is a distraction, a corruption of the intellectual game, of the crossword puzzle. In including a love story at its core, Umineko appears to spit in the face of the very principles of the genre it is imitating. This is the tribute and the deconstruction. This contradiction, a romantic detective story, a crossword puzzle with a heart, does not mean, however, that Ryakishi is simply agreeing with Wilson's assertion in Who Cares Who Killed Roger Ackroyd, that the detective genre doesn't count as literature. By breaking the rules of the Golden Age, he's doing the reverse. Perhaps the most widely quoted and also widely memed lines from Umineko is the ever-present, "Without love, the truth cannot be seen." As smirksome as this line has become out of context, it's almost impossible to talk about Umineko without discussion of this line, because of its centrality to the visual novel's meaning. This quote refers to many parts of the narrative, but most directly it refers to the symbolic love story between Beatrice and Battler. I have to say, as a first-time reader of Umineko, I felt extremely cheated at the conclusion of the visual novel's question arcs, when it becomes clear that the only reason Battler has survived on Beatrice's metaphysical game board is because she's letting him win. To me, this seemed to spit in the face of the narrative's tension and plausibility as a whole. If Beatrice was just letting him win, then what was the point of the detection? What was the point of being led down all these dead ends and red herrings if Beatrice just wanted Battler to solve her mystery anyway? Why couldn't she just, tell him the solution? Of course, this was all felt without the additional clarity of the answer arcs, which, as the names would suggest, gave me my answer. The adding of extra dimensions to caricatures such as the detective and the culprit, as well as Beatrice's aim to let Battler win their logical chess match, is paramount to Umineko's meaning. The love between Battler and Beatrice mirrors the love that Ryakishi sees between the reader and writer of a detective story. Beatrice wants Battler to solve her mystery in the same way that a detective writer wants their mystery to be solved. A Christie novel may appear to be baffling, but it always, at the end, contains an objective truth, a denouement, one that the reader has to be able to reach. Detective novels may pretend that they're unsolvable, but if they were unsolvable, they wouldn't be a good detective novel. Such is the meaning of that ubiquitous line in Umineko, "Without love, the truth cannot be seen." Without the love and dedication of a detective writer, and the simultaneous love and dedication of their readers, the mystery can never be solved. The truth cannot be seen. Ryakishi may deconstruct the Golden Age mystery novel at will, but in Umineko, there is always heart, meaning, and depth to the intellectual puzzle. The genre is thus elevated to something containing both mind and heart. This is why we care who killed the Ushiromiyas. This is why the detective story is more than just a crossword puzzle.